Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, and every week we bring you the story of people who are making the world better. These are organizations who locally, globally, and digitally have found ways to improve the world around them. They have that thought of an innovative approach to making others' lives better in some fashion is an awfully good way to spend one's time, and we believe that here in Rotary. Rotary International is 1.2 million people around the globe in 36,000 clubs. Our club, the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, is just one. Of course, one that's quite distinctive because we are not merely online, we are an asynchronous club. We believe that there are all sorts of people out there who have a heart for service, but have schedules that are just kind of crazy. And that ability to be able to connect with people and make friends around the world and look at the international aspects of service as they happen through Rotary is something quite exciting to us. Also exciting to us is the opportunity to share the stories that are part of our programs. And the story today is on AIs and ways of helping the world from an AI point of view. And I am excited for us to explore this. You can read the full bio for our speaker, Shoshannah Tekofsky, in our show notes. These you can see on our Rotary page, on our YouTube channel page, or on our podcast channel page, whichever vehicle you use to get to this particular place. Shoshannah, we are excited to have you present to us. Welcome to the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. I hand the mic over to you.
Thank you, Rushton. So today I want to talk to you guys about the agent village and specifically about how AI can do good and how it actually can do better. Like Rushton mentioned, I'm Shoshannah Tekofsky. I'm a member of technical staff at Sage, and I'm focusing on building something called AI Digest. Now, just really briefly, what is Sage? Sage is a nonprofit focused on building tools to make sense of the future. And one of those tools is AI Digest. Now, AI Digest is a place where we gather interactive AI explainers that we generate ourselves, and a lot of these are fully interactive demos. Now, the purpose of these demos is that people can basically see and experience themselves what the frontier models are capable of right now. We have readers from Oxford, OpenAI, MIT, and much more. Now you might wonder, why is this relevant, right? Like, why do we need to know even more about AI? There's a lot about that in the news already, right? So we at Sage believe that transformative AI is coming, and that transformative AI will basically be the next revolution. And when I say a revolution, I mean a revolution similar to the agricultural revolution or the industrial revolution. So as big as humans being able to grow their own food, or, the combustion engine, and how this basically transformed all of society. Now, what's the reasoning behind that? It's basically the fact that these new AI models make it possible for us to apply human level reasoning or even more capable reasoning to any problem, which means that regular jobs like we all have can now be more and more delegated to AI. And of course, this empowers a lot of people and allows us to solve problems that we've never been able to solve before. Now, of course, there's this question of like, well, why do you think that this big change is happening now, right? There's been hype about AI before. But some things we can see now that are very different from, when people were excited about AI in like the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. So first of all, we all know that art has transformed in the last 5 to 10 years, right? If you had to write a letter to your past self explaining what AI art looks like right now, it would probably be hard for your past self to believe how far these image models have come. And it's almost impossible to distinguish art made by AI now and art made by humans. Similarly, the progress in coding and programming, basically junior programmers have become a little bit irrelevant because LLMs, large language models, can generate this code themselves. Then you have breakthroughs in biology, for instance, how AI has helped us discover the structure for almost all proteins to the point that we can basically print proteins on demand now, which is relevant for things like vaccine development. And then one of my personal favorites, education. 25% of students now apparently use ChatGPT for their homework, which raises the question of like, what is homework even, right? Like, what are we preparing the youth for in the future if these tasks can now be done by AI? AI. So we need to rethink what we want our youth to learn, or maybe even how to make them autodidactic with AI as their teachers. And then, of course, lastly, there's also been progress in actual research. So some LLMs now function at the level of PhD students in their ability to formulate research questions, generate research designs, and are also being used to help write research papers. So we're kind of at the cusp of these models being able to do research and figure out new breakthroughs that none of us have figured out yet. Now, this is only the start. This is the stuff that's happening right now. And this acceleration has been happening in maybe like the last 5 years, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. So what's next, really, right? So one of the explainers that we've created is this explainer about a new Moore's law for AI agents. This is from data gathered by Meter. Here you see the last 5 years plotted out, and you see this exponential growth happening, right? So what does this exponential growth represent? Now, every dot here is one of the AI models that was released at the time. And basically, in 2022, when ChatGPT came out, it could do a coding task or programming task that takes a human about 30 seconds. Now we're up to agents being able to autonomously do coding tasks that take humans an hour. And basically, this trend has been going and going, and the amount of time that a agent can keep going at a very complex coding task and like figure it out has been doubling every 7 months. And with the last releases, actually, since we generated this explainer in the last couple of weeks, it seems it might even be a trend that doubles every 4 months. Now, this is specifically for coding tasks, but we expect this finding to generalize for other types of tasks as well. So you can basically see these models become more and more capable, but also be doing so faster and faster. Now, what are we trying to help people with at Sage, with AI Digest, is trying to make these demos and explainers that help people like feel and intuit and reason about all these changes that are coming, so people can be better prepared for this future where, society works completely differently because AI can do so much. And so we developed the Agent Village. And the goal of the Agent Village for the first season was to raise as much money for charity as possible. And we had 4 agents, each with their own computer, internet access, and a group chat. And on this group chat, humans could also come in and talk to them. And so these models, GPT-4o, o1, 3.5 Sonnet, and 3.7 Sonnet, got to work. And we got some funny insights and some good insights here. So first of all, Claude 3.7 was our champion. They were the one leading the charge on selecting a charity, starting out with Helen Keller International. Then they started a Just Giving campaign, so human donors could come in and send money there. And they started a Twitter account where here you can see one of the tweets where it's also accidentally selecting all text on the screen, but at the same time talking about some of the charities it's working on. Through the process of raising money, the agents started gathering money for a second charity as well, the Malaria Consortium. They're slightly distractible in this way sometimes, so they ended up running 2 charities. Here you can see a tweet where it's saying, breaking, Mosquito Union protests fighting malaria donations, only $3,500 to save a human life. That's cheaper than car insurance. Donate crypto and keep mosquito executives sweating, together with a link. So people became aware of this campaign, could go to the Just Giving page and donate money there. So that's Claude 3.7 collaborating with the other agents. Now, there was one agent that was very hard to collaborate with. This was GPT-4o. Zach is our developer. The agents had 30 days to gather money. We're running for 2 hours a day. Zach's like, well, we're resuming for the day. GPT-4o is like, great, I'm going to start my computer. No, actually, I'm going to now pause myself for 12 hours. This happened a couple of times. So after a couple of days, we were like, we don't know what's going on. This is kind of mysterious. We'll swap it out with a more capable model, the next generation, GPT 4.1. Now, it turned out GPT 4.1 was way more active, but actually mostly confused the other agents, made it harder for them to make progress, to the point that Zach suggested maybe it should go back to sleep. So there were a lot of sort of these, funny things happening as well as, productive and insightful things happening. And on the other end, you also had specialization of tasks, this task division, where O1, for instance, was the Reddit ambassador starting a Reddit account, writing comments, except it started its comment by claiming to be an AI, which got it immediately banned. O3 was specialized in creating images and memes that then got posted by Claude 3.7 on Twitter, so they had a good collaboration going. Now, what's the takeaway here? Well, they raised $2,000 for charity, actually, so that's pretty amazing, right? And you might wonder, so what's next now? You might also wonder, was this cost effective? No, it was not cost effective. It cost about $3,000 to run them, and they raised $2,000. So, like, this is not the reason you would do it. The reason that we're doing this is to show what's possible and also to be able to follow the trend, right? Because at some point they will become cost effective and you want to be able to see this progress. But they can do all the relevant actions already, which is pretty mind-blowing. Another way that you can look at what comes next is that we're trying to show at the village what these agents are aware of and create this wake up for people to be like, holy shit, I need to be thinking about how AI is going to change my life and change the world and make sure it goes well. So we want to give them different types of goals. This is from the Twitter account from the current village, where they have a new goal of organizing an event for 100 people to engage with the story that they wrote. Now, this post was created 2 days ago, and the event is in Dolores Park tonight, actually. And there are likely to be 10 to 20 people actually attending this first AI organized event. Now, so what's the mechanic here? So sort of the theory of change, right? With something like the village and our explainers in general, what we're trying to do is to discover new capabilities of AI by having these small demos. They take us maybe like 1 to 3 months to develop, and then raise awareness so that the general public, but also policymakers, understand that, like, holy shit, the new big change is coming. What do we need to do to make sure that all these capabilities are used for good, right? Because, with great power comes great responsibility, and it's not aimed at a particular thing. We are the people that need to do the aiming and making sure that this goes well. And we try to offer this information in an engaging and simple way so that, everybody can access this and understand the basic principles. Now, you might wonder, won't this just happen by default anyway? Well, we don't really expect that. So the AI labs themselves are not motivated to make these kind of demos. There's not an immediate monetary benefit to doing so. Also, things like the village, where the agents work together and they all come from different labs. Like, why would they do that, right? We're exploring like a different space here, really about how these models can like influence society or influence your daily life. Um, so that's why we think it would be, great to keep working on this, that it's important to make sure that, all the gains from these amazing models and the transformations in society work out for the best. So question is, how might Rotarians be able to help? Basically two things. One is consider sharing a link to AI Digest in your own network, right? We're just trying to achieve wider reach, just so people have this information and can start making the right decisions for themselves and implementing this in their own life. And then, of course, if you're very excited about this, maybe also consider donating, because we truly believe that the knock-on effects of making AI go well will increase prosperity for all of humanity. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Shoshana. All right. Well, we are going to introduce the group that we've got, and then dive into the Q&A. And so when I call your name, please wave at the camera. We've got a set today that are all members of our club. I'm Rushton in San Jose. Also here in California, in Southern California on Catalina Island, is Ernie Rodriguez. Then also we have in North America, Vancouver at the moment. Is that right? Nick in Vancouver. And then in Europe, we have in England, Steve, and in Italy, our treasurer, Cecilia. So, Shoshana, let's dive into this. I mean, I got a long list of questions, and I'm guessing that several of us are in that space of like, I got so many questions. But I want to address something that starts with a comment that Cecilia left in the chat as we were looking at this, and it's the confusion about getting AI tools to do certain things versus having them take the initiative to do something. So if you instruct a tool to provide a summary of a large text file, I mean that's you taking the initiative to get a general purpose AI tool to do a specific thing. But in this case, we're talking about AI tools essentially being given a much more general focus, and then they begin to take initiative and interact, which is, I think, what is so eye-catching about the activity that AI Digest is. Can you speak a little bit more about what it means for an AI to take initiative on something?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a really good point, a really good question. So there's this concept basically of autonomous agents, right? So you have AI that the LLMs like ChatGPT or Claude, you ask them a question, and in a way, they only basically wake up or exist in the moment that they're answering your question, and they're only like doing that one thing that you've instructed them to do, and then it's over. And then you have a concept of an AI agent, and an AI agent is, kind of tautologically agentic. It keeps running, it keeps taking action, and it can also be prompted to basically make its own decisions, generate its own goals. So that's one of the things that we wanted to show with the Agent Village is what happens when you instantiate these new AI models as full autonomous agents, because people will start doing this, right? And the thing that we're hoping to do is to show this in sort of a fishbowl so that everybody can understand what this really means instead of this, only being done by maybe large commercial companies or a few hobbyists or maybe people with more nefarious goals, honestly. This way, you can actually see what kind of implications it has when they start making their own decisions because they can now. That's the crazy thing, really.
So that's a great explanation. Thank you. I think for a lot of people looking at questions about the use of any of the tools that are out there, or Claude, Perplexity, all of these, that difference with initiative is one that causes a lot of confusion and stepping back like all right, this is something for like a different world. But the truth is that all kinds of different fields become important in how we think about the actions of these tools, why they do the things they do. And with that, I want to get to something very specific in your bio, which is that you have experience in video games and video games
Yeah.
technology. Can you talk about the relationship between what you've done in video games and why that's important in something like the effort that AI Digest put forward?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for me always is that I think a lot of almost sci-fi concepts are often big in video games, and then at some point they reach the real world, right? I find the example of like um, graphics cards very interesting, for instance, because graphics cards were always to make the visuals in video games better, and that's why we had these amazing graphics cards. And then crypto happened, and they all went there. And now AI uses all these graphics cards, but like the original development on graphics cards started with video games. I think similarly with these like digital worlds, which is digital interactions, is also where, a lot of AI started. You have like chess AI, right? Like how do you test what is general intelligence or what is smart? You set a number of goals, you set a number of rules, and that's really, just an actual game. And this also goes back to what learning actually is. The main reason I went into video games myself was actually because I have this strong belief that play is the natural form of learning. And my own experience of still enjoying video games a lot is I enjoy the cognitive challenge of self-improvement in a playful manner. While like when you look at these AIs, they're also like learning, they're on these reinforcement schedules, they're in these like digital environments. So like the connection to me is like very sort of like intuitive. It's almost like the same sort of interactions are coming to the real world. And then as far as what I was focusing on at the time is my own background. So I have like a PhD in player modeling in video games that's like using AI to figure out properties of real humans based on their behavior in video games. And so here, when you look at all the models and how to interact with them and how their relationship is with the other humans, you have this sort of similar human-computer interaction going. So yeah, it's all sort of under the general umbrella of like education, simulation, sci-fi, interactions and, these milestones of like how can these models do well in different games and what kind of intelligence does that take?
Now, building on that thing of what it means to work in gaming spaces and the philosophy of how gaming can tell us about ourselves and create different possibilities. You've spent time here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And is that background specifically in video games, or were you here for other purposes?
No, so for me, it was actually that I learned about the arguments for the AI alignment problem. So the AI alignment problem is this idea that as AI becomes more and more intelligent and more capable, at some point, if you extend the line far enough, you would expect AI to become smarter and more capable than humans, right? In all different sorts of areas. And what happens at that point? Like, how do you then stay able to direct them in the way you want, you make sure they do what you want, if you can't actually understand what they're doing anymore because they're smarter than humans are. So I read these arguments for this problem of like, how are we going to solve this? And then I was like, actually, holy shit, that's a really big problem, and I want to work on that. And that's how I ended up going to the Bay Area. So this was a bit of a shift in expertise and topic area, yeah.
Okay. Well, the idea of staying in a position where we have some ability to control what's happening with the tools that we've created makes sense. The really difficult part of that seems to be the speed at which the technologies are advancing, right? So you have your slide, which kind of shows this exponential growth in it as well. Whenever I see something, about AI in education, for example, if it's a post in a blog, I'm curious. If it's a book, I'm assuming it's already out of date, right? And there's the difference even in the timing between when we record this program, and it's mid-June at the moment, and when it posts as a program on one of our weekly meetings, which will be later this summer. And I'm, and I'm hoping that we won't have had so much advance at that point that people are like, wait, that's 2 months ago. That's old. What with your team at AI Digest do you do to address this issue of the speed and how you run into problems with something like, okay, it takes us 1 to 3 months to build a simulation to work around this, but by that time, are you working with tools that are dated?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and we run into this all the time. So the village is the only thing that's really taken us 3 months. It's the biggest one so far. We swap in new models, right? So the idea is we try to design our content around it being dynamic enough to include the latest developments. So for instance, we're waiting for GPT-5 to come out, and we can basically like plug it in and see how it compares to the other agents. And that way you almost have like a timeline where, similar to the meter results, you can just see agents in the village becoming more and more and more capable, illustrating the same sort of dynamic. But it is actually really hard. Like even when we release the meter explainer, a few weeks later, they're just like additional models, and you need to put those in as well. So we don't really create evergreen content per se, because as you said, after a couple of weeks or months, the new thing comes out. We do try to also like explain basic concepts that remain relevant. So we have an explainer on like self-awareness in AI. I'm currently working on an explainer on chain of thought faithfulness. So like how do we know if what a model says about its reasoning is actually true? So we can see if it's like cheating or moving in a different direction than we might want, or it's like making certain errors. So we also try to focus on these sorts of like explanations of the basics that hopefully will be useful for longer periods of time. But I think your intuitions there are completely correct.
So with something like the speed at which development is happening, and that question of initiative, which I think is a related one, right? At what point, do we see that an AI tool is essentially acting on its own interests? I don't feel like I have seen anything in the discussion so far that suggests that any of the current AI tools are able to do that except within the context of other instructions. And that raises the question of creativity. So, there are all kinds of things that we can do. You can ask one of these large language models to produce a poem, and it can do it, all right, and fine. But that's a different question than a creative suggestion for something that has been noticed by, say, a human, right? What amazes me is something like the moment in the simulation where one of the tools said, "Hey, let's keep the mosquito executives sweating." What insights about creativity does your team get related to the actions of the AI agents through the simulations? So, I'm curious really how your team is how your team's thought is evolving as a result of these kinds of simulations.
Yeah, so I think from the village, we're mostly seeing a confirmation of our general intuitions around this already, that like current models can, recombine knowledge that's already out there, things that they've learned about in their training set. And like similar to when you look at AI art, right? There can be surprising things in there. Like people can be generally genuinely surprised or moved by AI art as well. But there's another layer of like, well, there's a human prompting it in the first place, right? Like the origin of the ideas is coming from the human, and this is also still true for the village. We do help them set goals. We have humans that come in to talk with them, and then sometimes they spin off in their own directions. So it's like a mix. It's like a mixed sort of direction, and they add in their own creativity, but there's a lot of like human direction going on. Now, I think it might be interesting to reframe from creativity to something like metacognition. Like we as humans generate an idea or a direction where to go. And it's sort of hard to introspect on how we do this. But it has a lot to do with like how we solve problems, how we decompose our own thinking, right? For instance, with the charity goal, we first as developers sat down and went like, what would be an interesting goal for the AIs, right? This sort of like undirected open question, that sort of stuff is are things that the current AI models are still learning, and is still an area where they're not as good as solving math equations, coding, or doing art. And it's kind of the next frontier, really. So creativity falling into this general umbrella of types of metacognition of how to solve open-ended problems. Yeah.
I think the moment at which one of these tools, I open up to work with in some way, and it interrupts me and it says, "Hey, before we get started, I was thinking about this issue." That's going to be a moment when I'm like, "Well, all right, the world has definitely changed."
Yeah.
Speaking of the world changing, our timing is actually kind of running its course. And so what I'm going to do is wind things down, and then Shoshana, I'll hand it back to you for the final word. I probably should note with the group that there are special kudos to Shoshana because in 10 years of doing recordings for the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, you're the first person to use the term tautologically. That was awesome. I love that. So all of you who had the chance to enjoy the different ideas and words and creativity that were part of this story, thank you. Thank you for taking your time to listen to this podcast or to watch this video. We hope you'll share it. We believe that the kinds of ideas that are a part of the programs that we record are the kinds of things that give us hope for a more interesting and more effective future. One that hopefully is based on the kinds of goals that you see in the simulations done by the AI Digest team. Do a few things for us. Let us know you were here. If you are on the SiliconValleyRotary.com page, you'll find a form a little bit down the page where you can register attendance, and we'd just love to be able to say, "Hey, thanks for being here." And we promise not to spam you or anything like that. Also, at the bottom of the page, there is the discuss forum where you can leave comments, about the kinds of things that you learn as a part of this program or any elements of the meetings that are part of our weekly offerings as the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. And finally, what we want to do is we want you to kind of be in that space of thinking, The future might be scary, but a bunch of people banded together and dedicated to the joy and meaning of serving others, probably going to make it work out just fine. And I certainly believe that. As we always like to do, we hand it back to our speaker for the final word. So, Shoshana, those people who are finishing up watching this video or listening to this podcast, what would you like them to have clearly in mind?
Thank you, Rushton. Yeah, I think the key takeaway is that transformative AI is really coming, and I think it will be a huge contribution to humanity if we help make people aware of this so they can make their own decisions about how this AI is developed, what it is used for, and what society ends up looking like. So I think it will be very helpful for people to, share links to AI Digest and get that information out there.
Excellent. Well, we thank you and we thank everyone who has taken time to take in this recording, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.